Hi, I know it's 8:45 in the morning on a college campus, actually 9 now. So I think we'll have a few more people here coming in. I hear them outside getting coffee. Um, oh, so yeah, just a little bit about me. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Gary and Brant, and all of you with Mobile Me. So just a little bit about me. And by the way, I am talking about AI today, but I know people get a little scared about AI, maybe, I don't know, taking their jobs away. So I have cute little robot friends generated by AI to kind of take us through this presentation. I hope by the end you'll see that AI is here to help you and that you are in control of it. It's a tool. So if you're interested, I have the prompts to help you make cute little construction paper robots, but there's your hint. Uh, maybe I should make a little Etsy store. I've been here for a little over a decade here at the Newhouse School. It's the best job I've ever had. And I basically, in my job, I experiment with a lot of different emerging media technologies, specifically for journalism. And AI is the latest one, but I've also done stuff with augmented reality, virtual reality. Is kind of what a lot of what I'm known for. And I was excited to see Jason Webb, a professor here, kind of take the torch there. I've been spending a lot of time working with AI tools recently. And in fact, I'm currently pursuing a master's in applied data science with a concentration in AI at our iSchool here. And that can tell you right now just how important I think this is of an inflection point. I've worked within large news organizations. I was on the WashingtonPost.com team that launched WashingtonPost.com. So was Gary Kebbel here going back. And I feel like a lot of the things that we saw happen back then at the first big inflection point, which the dawn of the internet, are starting to happen again, which can be scary. But also it means that if you are just have your toe a little bit in it, or maybe, I don't know, your entire leg in it, um, it's a great opportunity to do new things with journalism, especially at a time when things are so not as strong as they used to be in journalism. So that's kind of my um, where I'm coming from with this. So looking at AI, I think right now it's probably tempting to see it as something that's new, but it started in 1900. And this is not really a new thing. So it really started with mathematicians. I recently wrote a book called Experimenting with Emerging Media Platforms, did a lot of research into this in the chapter in AI, and it really does go back pretty far. The term robot was coined back then, and it wasn't until 1950 then when, interestingly, the term artificial intelligence was invented. I think it's good to remember that, it was an aspirational term. There was basically a group of white male professors who met at Dartmouth, and they had been playing around with these algorithms and decided, we need a sexier term for this. Let's call it artificial intelligence, okay? So just keep that in mind, like when we're looking at things or we're working with ChatGPT and we start thinking, we think it's intelligent. I mean, that was an idea, and it really still is very much an idea. So I'm going to try to break down what AI really does currently, generative AI. And basically, AI went through a lot of different, like the Gartner's hype cycle, where you had, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. It's just looking at the color of hair of people in here. Anybody remember when Bill Gates stood up in the 1990s and said, "The future is wizards. We're going to have wizards for everything," right? And what did we get? We got Clippy, right? And Clippy, which I think they should bring Clippy back and make Clippy like, hey, now I'm really intelligent, Clippy. That was, one wave, and then it kind of went into this trough for a little bit, this, another AI winter. But it was really in the early part of the 2010s that what we now call large language models started to appear, that there were new, wasn't that the understanding was really that new. It was that we had large data sets, the internet, right, and everything that kind of went in there, and large data stores like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure and cloud computing, that then made it possible finally for these algorithms to really do their work, because they could be exposed to all this data, which is called training. All right, and so that's why we're now seeing all of this focus on generative AI. So what is generative AI? It's really word prediction. So probably today, if I think I see some of you on your phones, maybe texting somebody, which is okay. And it's probably doing autocomplete or autocorrect. You know, more and more you're typing an email and or even a text, and it just writes a sentence. You're like, wait a second, that's not what I want to say. All right. That's the basis of a large language model, is that it's things like ChatGPT, Dolly for images and Midjourney for images. Claude is another AI model that you can use, kind of like ChatGPT. And they're basically predicting what the logical next word is, or the logical next image is, or the logical next whatever is, even a molecule. So this is being used for all kinds of things, and it's patterns, right? And so if you were to, start saying something, even like I'm talking right now, if I say, my name is, right? Well, it could be, based on the patterns, it would say, John, Michael, Dan, David, right? Those are the possibilities. And that's essentially what's happening. So you've been using essentially the roots of large language models probably for the last, I don't know, 8 years or so on your cell phones. But there wasn't a lot of data. So this is a really great, I'm not going to show this visualization other than a screenshot, but if you look this up, the Financial Times did, I think, what was the best visualization of what a GPT is. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. I like to kind of break these things down so that people see like, oh, there's a meaning behind these words. And essentially if you go through that visual, it does a really great job showing how it's all about tokenization. It's about turning words or patterns of images or whatever into math. All right. Computers are digital. They're going to do math on things, and they actually do math on the predictive, um, logical next whatever, when they're kind of figuring out what to do, what to, say next or show next. And so what it does, so these are just some lingo, it tokenizes them, and then those get turned into embeddings. So you kind of like move down through this. I highly recommend going through that little scrolly telling feature. It really kind of it demystifies it. And you see that, okay, at the end, then the computers can work on all this data and then really predict things and give you, your cute construction paper robots or your answers to complex questions, right? But they're using all this pre-trained data. So that's important to keep in mind. And that's why you get, so-called hallucinations. They're not really hallucinating anything. They're just repeating the patterns that they see, that they know about, which creates some conundrums, right? So pre-trained data, something out of the way here, it's needed in order for them to do anything, right? Well, so then, well, who gets to decide which data that large language model is trained on and which data is not, right? Who's represented in it and who's not? If it's based on the internet, you raise your hand if you feel like the internet is completely unbiased and completely representative of everybody. I don't see a single hand going up. There are, cases you've probably seen of how, I don't know, people say it's like AI is racist or AI is, homophobic. It's not that. It's just that the data that's being fed into it represents our society, and we need to kind of keep factor that in. So there are biases in there because there are biases in our society. And there's a lot of issues around copyright. You probably read. So the New York Times is probably the most, most talked about litigant against AI companies for, stealing their copyright to train things. I'm not sure where I stand on this. I'm waiting to see kind of how things roll out with these lawsuits and with different laws here and also in the EU in particular. But I always think about this when I first understood how generative AI works in the training. I thought, well, I read books, I watch movies, and then I come up with ideas that are kind of inspired by them. How different is that, right? And you may say, well, because it's like, it's spitting it out again. But think about music. Most music you listen to it's, if you're a musician, especially, you know that, oh, people are just kind of riffing, right? And so I do think copyright's important, but I think also maybe these, just as the AI is kind of reflecting ourselves back to us, that it's really in some ways doing the same thing that we all do with our media. And there should be guardrails, but I think that has to be in context. All right, so here's another term you probably have not heard of in this. Has anybody heard of this? Retrieval augmented generation? All right, a few of you who are working with AI. I think this is the biggest opportunity for news organizations in particular to take advantage of. And basically, what it does is it improves your accuracy of whatever it is you're reporting on, because you're essentially pre-training a large language model to use other tools to then get answers to questions on data that you give it, um, and with a better context. So a great example of retrieval augmented generation is Perplexity. Who's used Perplexity? Who's used Perplexity today? I use Perplexity all the time. I don't use Google anymore. I'll use Google to fact check Perplexity. And I find that it does a really great job of getting me to websites, because it gives you sources and you can ask it more specifically to get you information. It's using retrieval augmented generation. Um, Chat GPT, which I'm sure all of us have used or may use, may even use the pro version. They have something called Search GPT. It's trying to do what Perplexity is doing, and that's supposedly going to be integrated into Chat GPT sometime next year. But it's like this is the next wave, and I think it's a huge opportunity for news organizations and journalists. So let's sort of break this down. This very intentionally simple Tinker Toy diagram shows what happens when you talk to something like ChatGPT or Claude, right? So you ask a question, put a prompt in, it goes, the large language model, it checks its pre-trained data, which is the entire internet. You may think, oh, it has the whole internet, so it's going to be like the best results, right? But that's general information, right? And it's so just like the very next word could likely be many other words, you're just going to get random stuff coming back from that, all those possibilities, right? So if you rerun the prompt, you'll get different things back. I think we're all kind of familiar with that now. Then you get your answer, right? Well, that can be kind of a dangerous thing for information, because there is randomness in there, right? And it's not very specific. This is what retrieval augmented generation does. You have another data set that you put in front of the AI before it ever gets to an AI. And often that's technology known as machine learning or coding or other types of analysis. And then that's where the information really comes from, right? So you're giving it data, you're asking it specifically what you want it to do with it and how, all right? And I'll show you examples of what I mean by that. And then the results get sent to the LLM. We can say LLM now, right? Large language model. And the LLM is just the interface to get it back to you. Okay, so there's more control over what it gives you, right? So keep those two images in your mind, right? This is how most people are using AI right now, and it's a little scary sometimes. This right here, other knowledge bases, right? Every newspaper has archives, photos, videos, documents. Every reporter, good reporter, has a whole lot of documents or access to data from sources, right? You can put those into, you can create retrieval augmented generation systems that help you become a better reporter. And that's what I focus on. This is why people ask me like, are you afraid AI is gonna take your job away? And I say, I mean, if you're lazy, yes. But if you're doing this kind of thing, you're gonna be so much more efficient at doing your job as a reporter, and as a storyteller, any type of information provider. And you'll have more time also to really do the human things that I think we're losing as newsrooms get smaller, right? And have the time to really, get out there and talk with people. Yeah, maybe one day we'll have robots talking to people, but do you really want to talk to a robot? I don't think most people would. I don't think we're going to get good stories that way. All right. So what can you do now with AI for standard journalism tasks? That's really what I want to focus on for the rest of my talk today. So story generation, you've probably, all of you, asked for headline recommendations. I know that actually from our friends at Syracuse.com through Advance, with probably help from David Cohn here in the audience, they're already like, getting suggestions for headlines in the CMS, and this is happening at newsrooms across the country now. But did you know that you can actually just take data sets and upload them into different large language models and ask them to analyze things? And then ask them, hey, what trends do you see in here? So it's funny, this is actually already dated. You can tell when I made this slide. I was looking at expenditures from the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign. That would be the Harris campaign, the Trump campaign. And my prompt is, it's like, hey, I'm attaching a data set of campaign expenditures in these two campaigns. Can you look through it and give me 10 suggestions on types of stories that you think could be in here, right? So I'm not asking it for a specific answer. I'm asking it to help me like do what it does best, comb through all this, see the patterns, right? It's performing math on them. Like our brains don't work that way. The computer brain, so to speak, does work that way. So let's take advantage of that. And then you do the work. Transcriptions, I think probably everybody has used AI for transcriptions. In fact, I bet even right now with this going over Zoom webinar, I'm being transcribed by Otter. Yeah, right over here. Yeah, right there. That's right. With the I forget what you call that system, but the closed captioning. Well, what did it say? Is it mad at me? Is is a robot rebellion starting? So you can actually do your own recordings, and there are a number of different. You can actually get an account for really cheap on the back end of OpenAI that runs ChatGPT, and then upload transcriptions there, and then get stuff back that is a little bit more pure than what you would get from a full product like Otter. Full disclosure: when I wrote my book, Experimenting with Emerging Media Platforms, I interviewed about 10 different experts in that book. And I ran the transcriptions through even before ChatGPT was out. And it was very helpful. And I went through them all. Okay. But, big warning. One thing I noticed immediately was that if there was a break in the conversation flow, the AI did not like that. And it invented a bridge part of the conversation to make it flow better because that's how it had been trained to do things. So and that's what we sometimes call hallucination. So if you were to use AI for transcriptions, do go back and read the transcription while listening to the audio clip so you don't accidentally then publish a bunch of BS. And sometimes it's really funny. And I have a story about that in my book about Nani de la Pena, which she loves to tell. Analyzing archives for background stories. So you can, let's see here. Yeah, you can ask these AI algorithms, the ones that especially use retrieval augmented generation like Perplexity, hey, where can I find data sets in this format around this topic? And it does a way better job than any search engine does, is what I found. And at least gives you kind of ideas for where to then spend more time searching, right? You'll find, a list of different sources that you can go to that publish data that you can then use. Of course, there are, a lot of different sources for government data, like data.gov you can use. But I was able to use, at the time it was Bing Copilot was a name, I forget what they call it now. And I found that it would go deep into these sites and then get me the CSVs and tell me where it got it from. So it was like giving me exactly what I needed and then giving me the context. So one of the most exciting things, again, is analyzing and visualizing data. So this is what I'm most excited to talk about. This is from a workshop I gave at NAHJ. You don't have to memorize all this stuff, but here I have my cute construction paper robot chef who's going to tell you how you can cook up a nice dish of data with AI. Again, you can find data from public sites. And this is the most important here. You need to have familiarity with what you can do as a human being with data using spreadsheets, using basic math, sorting and filtering, pivot tables. Any of my journalism students here have actually learned that in a Foundations of Data and Digital Journalism class. Now you know what's possible to do. That is the key. If you don't know what's possible to do, you don't know what to ask for, okay? Because these computers they know how to do all this stuff, but at a more fundamental level without that interface that is Excel or Google Sheets. It's also good to know a little bit about HTML, and most importantly, know about uh, uh, functionality tools, usually using JavaScript or something like that. So open source code libraries, if you know they exist, and if that's confusing to you, go talk to a web designer, tell them, hey, I'm looking for some open source code library that can do this for me. They'll be able to very quickly find them for you. You can then ask the AI engines, hey, can you use this JS library to visualize that for me? And when I saw that it could do that, my mind was totally blown. So I'll show you examples. Um, Other things you'll want to have, obviously, some kind of way to do things with data like Excel. Google Sheets seems to be working better lately for me. I've noticed some kind of a coding editor, mostly so you can take the code that AI gives you and then turn it into a web page and open it to see what it made. Um, and if you can afford it, having an account, one of the pro accounts, and I'd recommend either ChatGPT or Claude, seem to have the best results. It's $20 a month. Be bold. Go to your manager. Be like, can I expense this? Here's what's going to let me do. Even if they say no, it's going to make you so much more effective. Okay, so do it anyways. And no, I don't get any money from ChatGPT or Claude. But I'm going to show you also how you can do stuff for free. There's a sort of a AI aggregator called Poe, sort of like Edgar Allan Poe. If you go to poe.com, I see Nada over here nodding because we use this in the AI class that I taught into the spring. You can do stuff for free. All right. So what I'm going to show you here is something that you could do yourself and try to recreate this for free. So I see some of your laptops, go to poe.com, make a free account, because at the end of this, you'll actually be able to then use my chatbot and see what I made. So this is sort of a really basic type of story, sort of a news you can use kind of story. Electric cars, you may drive an electric car, partially electric car. Maybe you're thinking of getting one like me, but the big worry is, I need to go to DC to see my parents. Where can I charge my car, right? This is why I haven't bought one yet, because I feel like I want that infrastructure to be there, right? So, and this is something that everyone can relate to. So it turns out in the state of New York, in most states, the state actually tracks where the charging stations are. So you can go to, get that data. It's a CSV, here it is, and it shows like where are the charging stations, the address, what kind of charging can they do. And then in Poe, you can then basically upload that data, which I think I show here. So you have that CSV. What I learned in Poe is that if you upload a CSV, it'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't do Windows." Remember those commercials? It's like, "Oh yeah, I can clean your house, but I don't do Windows." "Oh yeah, I can't read a CSV." It's lying to you. If you actually go to Google Sheets, I found, and you save it as a HTML file, you upload that, it can totally read it. All right, so what it wants is fielded data. And then you write a prompt, right? So here I say, you're a helper bot that provides a list of electric vehicle charging stations for someone who's traveling across the state of New York. Use only the data in the attached CSV as your knowledge base. When you deliver results, cite the specific part of data set from which your answers are derived. Notice how direct I was, all right? Think of this as you're a manager, you know what your employee is capable of doing. You don't want them to go off the rails. You want them to be like really focused. So you're very specific, right? And this is what I'm talking about when I say, know what it's able to do. Even if you don't know how to do it yourself, know that it's possible and that it's something that a computer somewhere can do. When you do that, then here's the results of my chat bot, and I actually have a QR code so you can try it yourself if you have Poe, right? So I asked here, hey, you know, I'm driving from from New York City. I'm going to Syracuse. Where can I charge my car? And it gives me a list of the locations along with links to the place in the data set with more information, right? So I can test that, and it's pretty accurate. Um, and here's the cool part, all right? They say, hey, thanks. I always say thank you to the robots, by the way, because I think they might remember later if you're not nice to them. Thanks. Can you use the leaflet.js library to create a map of these locations so that I can download them as an HTML file? All right. The first thing I asked was, hey, can you map this? And it said, oh, sure. Yeah. You just go to Google Maps and upload your spreadsheet and you'll get this. And I'm like, and I think I remember I literally said, that's too much work for me. Do you have any other ways of doing, you know, can you use any JavaScript libraries? Because I knew that there's something called Leaflet that maps things and is open source. And it did it. And I just like, I think I had to go get a cup of coffee up. I was like, oh my gosh. And it writes the code. And I noticed just recently, this was just last week when I updated my slides, it now embeds the map in the results. And they were accurate. Okay. But I got the HTML and I could then put that into a web page. Pretty amazing. I can remember once having spent probably 2 days trying to get good at Leaflet, and I'm like, I suck, I can't do this. But if only I had somebody who could do it for me. Now you have that person to do it for you, and that's powerful. And all this works on mobile, by the way, as we're here at Mobile Me. These chatbots are really great on mobile. So, and yeah, you can then copy the code. If you put it into that coding editor, save it as an HTML file, it works. And then you could, you know, if you know how to do stuff with HTML, you could do more around that, or you could send it to your web designer. They could do more with it. Easy. So what superpowers do we now have? If you have some other data sets, you can augment the information the large language model can work with, right? Every journalist who's a good journalist, a news organization that's a good news organization, has more data, right? That's sort of what we do. You know, we get information, and then it, you know, it kind of builds up, and we're like, oh, I'll get to that eventually, right? You can break through that that barrier now and have your robot buddy, maybe your little construction paper robot friend. I really want to build that thing, 3D. Do it for you, right? And it wants to. They're very eager. But the key lesson is know what your worker can do so you can manage them better, right? Has anybody had a manager who didn't know what you did and asked you to do stuff that you could tell they had no clue what you could do or not? It was sort of insulting. And were they a good manager? No, right? So if you want to be effective, you have to be good manager robots. You need to know what they're capable of doing, which sometimes means doing some of it yourself, even if you suck at it, right? Because they can do it better once you know. So here, if you want to take a picture of this or scan it now, if you register for Poe, you can chat with my little electric vehicle charging bot. Happy to show you in between breaks this and other things that I have. But that's that. So last thing I want to talk about. Oh, sure. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. No. What is it? I'm gonna hit the wrong button. So I kind of mentioned this for Post specifically. It doesn't understand CSVs, but it's lying to you. You can also work with documents. So this is something I felt really proud of as a Latin American Hispanic person. Thanks to Robert Hernandez, I ran the AI and emerging tech sections for NAHJ, National Association of Hispanic Journalists. And I did a workshop. It was a 2-hour workshop about this. And there were 100 journalists in the room. People were really hungry for this. And I was just like, oh, I hope this works. And so we kind of like talked about what's possible. And then they actually did it. And the big story everyone was trying to report on at the time was Project 2025, right? Those documents that went out that are now talked about all the time, and in the current political campaign. At the time, like that was a bury them with documentation strategy, which having worked with the Washington Post, I remember this happened a lot. Like some federal agency would just drop so much, and then the journalist, it would take a long time to sift through that. I could see heads nodding. Maybe you've kind of been in that situation before. Well, Project 2025, those 900 pages were all in PDFs. So first thing I did is I downloaded one, and I just checked to see, can you copy and paste text? Yes, you can. I'm like, it's machine readable. And I put them into what's called a custom GPT in Chat GPT Plus. So here we have all those documents. And what you can do with a custom GPT is then you give it the data, right? So it could be CSVs. In this case, it could be just text blobs, is what they call that. And then you write kind of a super prompt once that it will always do when people then chat with that bot, right? So I was very specific. I said, hey, you're a data analysis bot that helps reporters guide people through the key elements of the Republican Project 2025 documents. Your goal is to help them report on what they plan to do if Trump's elected, and you'll reference specific chapters and pages, right? Because that's what his goal was. It's not to report on this, it's to help reduce that amount of time so that the journalists can then actually find, see what the trends are and report on the stories. And in the space of really like 20 minutes, it did it. And after that, a lot of these journalists went back to their newsrooms and they used this to then report on that. And also, they came up to me afterwards and said, I've had this stack of, right? They had all these different stories. I remember someone from the Seattle Times talking about different stories that, like big document sets, and wanted to know if they'd work. I'm like, well, give it a try. I mean, I don't know. I think it probably would if it's machine readable. And you can note here that unlike regular old ChatGPT, because we're using retrieval augmented generation, it's giving links even to the data sets in the section within it. I think in this result you don't see it, but you can get links. And if it doesn't give you the links, you can ask it, say, hey, I really need to know that, give me the deep links to the specific sections, and it'll do it. So you have to be really, just really specific about what it is that you need. Okay, unfortunately, I wanted you all to be able to use this, but when I tried to update it, I ran into the same problem that app publishers for mobile devices have run into for years, which is, oh, ChatGPT decided, well, yeah, this violates our standards for something that's public, so yeah, we're not comfortable with this, so you can't use it. I can use it myself, but that's okay because I don't really want the public to use it. This is really a tool. But this is sort of, get ready. Like this is I think the future for a lot of these things, right? They're going to be just like, Apple or Google won't, actually mostly just Apple won't publish a certain app. They may, I don't know, maybe it's a rape survivor, help, resources guide app, and they'll block that because they say, oh, we can't do anything about this, it's too controversial or whatever, or it has, depictions of, or descriptions of, bad things. We're going to run into that. There are ways around that. That's where working with developers in your organization can help. You don't have to use these pro tools. This is why I say the news organizations really have a lot of power here. They can create these kinds of inwardly focused large language models with retrieval augmented generation and make the reporters much, much more effective. You do need to fact check things. And if you're doing stuff with data sets, if you don't know what a pivot table is, you should just maybe have ChatGPT teach you how to use a pivot table. It's actually a really good teacher. I find it very effective. Just the spot checking, you can tell pretty quickly if it's kind of, gone on a, maybe it made a bad assumption, and you can kind of correct that. But you do need to be able to have the skills to go in and just check things just like you would as, a copy editor or checking facts. And this is, I think, really important. I actually learned this a couple years ago from my friend Bill Frischling, who had been doing stuff with large language models for a while. Always include something like this. If you're giving data to one of these systems, say, use the data I'm giving you and only that data. Don't use other stuff from the internet, right? And if you just remember to put that in there, it's going to greatly reduce the amount of hallucinations or whatever you want to call it in the results that you get. And be specific about what you don't want it to do, right? So in my electric car charging thing, I noticed that it stopped giving me links and was just, giving me information. So I said, please stop just giving me the summary. I want the full data and a link to the data set, and it complied immediately, right? It's just making assumptions based on what others probably are wanting, right? So, you know, I mean, our fellow internet users, including us often, we just want like the quick, the quick fix. I think when you're using this for your job as a reporter, you have to resist that temptation and spend a little more time. You're already like saving time that you would have spent otherwise. So don't be lazy. You really still have to work. So that's what I have for today. Here's my link tree, has all the current ways to reach me. So feel free to copy that. Yeah, and if there are any questions, we have time. Yeah, okay. So Gary's going to, actually, and we can have two microphones because this is hot, so I'll just stay right here. You want to like, um, yeah.
Good morning, Dan. Um, there's going to be a question somewhere tied up in this. I kind of just want your take on it because I just personally don't know what to do with it. Sometimes when we're working with Claude or ChatGPT to kind of aggregate massive amounts of words, how do I say this? It doesn't follow directions, and I want to be nice to it the way that you said. I don't want to bully it. But I will basically be like, hey, can I have 1,000?
Also, because you'll be training it to.
Right, exactly, right. I mean, bad code makes bad code. So basically, it was just, hey, we want 2, 3, 4,000 words on a bunch of different things. Specifically, we want maybe 1,000 in this case, and make them cover a variety of things, and don't give any repeats. That's basically what we say, and then it will it will give us a list and be like, here's 887 words, and there's about 25 repeats, but it doesn't say that, and you find them, and then you go back and you'll tell Claude, you did not follow directions. Go ahead and do that again, and they're like, it literally will come back and be like, oh my gosh, you're so right. I totally messed up. And then it'll do it a second time. You're like, Claude, you're not listening to me. Yeah. I guess my question here is like, what is that? When do we, every time I hear people, will bring up different theories about AI, you'll have naysayers kind of be like, well, it could never do this. It could never do that. And I feel like now my answer is always, oh, it will. In some way, it'll get there. And I feel like it will get over whatever this is. But like, what is this kind of glitch in the large language modeling, which makes it incapable of understanding repetition, scale, nuance?
So fun fact, the people who program these will tell you, we don't actually know what's happening underneath. So anyone who tells you the answer to that, they're lying, because the actual creators of these tools will say, in that process of, tokenization down to the math, the lower you get, they're like, we know this works. We don't know how. The other thing you hear a lot is that the lines of code to create the large language model on that huge data set is really small. Like I've heard at times it's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages. I'm looking at Sulu here because I think he's right. So there's some mystery there. This is why I like to point out that there is this other layer that more of these models are using, and you can use, called retrieval augmented generation. So I don't know what specifically you're putting in. If you're just asking questions, that's going to happen. But if you give more data, I think then it'll focus on that and then augment with what it knows. Yeah.
So this is something I was thinking about back when I was working on NPR One years ago, and we were doing personalization. And I remember sitting down with one of the data scientists because I was thinking a lot about how do we make sure what we're doing with personalization has editorial integrity. And I was really taken back when the data scientist said to me, she's like, well, we don't know what it's doing really. I'm like, okay, but how do I know there's editorial integrity? And I think as journalists who are thinking about, the editorial integrity and ethics, and maybe this is a question for you too, like, how do we deal with the fact that at some level we don't know what the AI is doing and we're becoming very reliant on it for a lot of good reasons because it's making our jobs work better? Mm-hmm. How do we ensure it's doing what we need it to do without causing unintended, editorial issues? Like, I don't know, this is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, no, me too. I mean, pardon my French, but you got to check that shit. You have to fact check. You don't get a pass on not doing that. And how you go about doing that, I think, is really the big question right now for places that have editorial integrity, right? What I get worried about is, places that don't have any integrity, who are just putting these out there and saying, oh, well, that's just doing what it does. Like, that you don't get a pass for doing that, right? And that's why, other than my electric vehicle charging bot, it's not that dangerous if I put that out there and then somebody gets bad data, right? But if it's something about, I don't know, abortion access, or things like that, and it's like, it gives them bad information, like that worries me, right? You could actually end up causing harm. So that's, I think the more harm that can be, you know, that can happen by not putting the time in to ensure integrity. We should always put some in, but you can never, like, you're never going to do all the things that the AI does, right? So I think we need some new standards, which we're only going to come to by us all playing around with this and figuring out what those are and agreeing based on what we know works and doesn't work. Of okay, if you put in, a huge data set, and then you have this, you roll this out to your newsroom. What do we need to do in order to then make sure that we know that it's like, do we test 5%, the types of queries, and is that statistically accurate to then determine that it's going to be, 80% accurate? I don't really see that happening yet. I think that's what needs to happen. So, yeah. It, and it's not going to be the developers of the AI systems that do that. Just like, I mean, look at what we just went through in the last 15 years with tech companies doing everything else from, search to social media. We should not just assume that they're going to do that, because they haven't, right? And they also will tell you, well, we don't have to, because they apply common carrier laws. I was talking with Gary Kebbel about this the other day, right? But we, as news organizations and journalists, we have that responsibility. So we need to take it on, right? And we need to, if there's anybody who, sees this, video later or is watching now, streaming, I mean, like, it's on you to then pay for that in your newsroom. I'm looking at the camera here, breaking the fourth wall, to invest in that, right? And if you're not, then you're making the same mistake that you made in the era of social media, where the measure of success you made was how many likes and tweets and shares are we getting. That has nothing to do with information, right? That's marketing. So we need to even apply that standard even more, I think, to all types of AI. Yeah.
So I was going to comment on this is both specific and broad, specifically about counting characters or words, but also to your point, Tamar, broadly speaking, a hack that I have found is the more you break up the steps that an LLM is taking, the more specific you can get with it, the more you feel like you understand what exactly is happening. So LLMs are terrible. They're trash at counting for some reason. How many R's are in a strawberry is like a meme for a while because it just couldn't get it right, right? And it will not count words. But to Dan's earlier point, if you tell it, hey, download a JavaScript library that counts words, it'll do that and then run that JavaScript library on how many words, and then you'll get the right answer. But you just have to really kind of break it out. If you try and do it in one prompt, it will, especially on counting words, it'll just it's essentially statistically guessing. I don't know, and I don't know why. I think it's because it thinks in tokens rather than words, and so it's just sort of whatever is happening, right? But if you break it out and say, hey, let's add a step here where we use JavaScript essentially to count the words, then you'll start to get accurate answers.
Yeah. Also, the large language model, I mean, it is predictive, right? It's not exact, but software tools are more exact. I don't think we can assume anything is going to be 100% exact, just as we can't assume a human will be. But if there was a JavaScript library, just like you have Excel, as a function, yeah, we're pretty sure that it's like 99%, accurate based on what it's supposed to do. So, and I have talked to some LLM, scientists about this, and that's what they say. They're investing in, retrieval augmented generation and more, right, to then kind of make their systems better. So I think they do know that this is a problem, but they're not required to like solve it. They're just solving it because they want to. Okay. I feel like we're required to ensure that. So we need to really take the steps to do it.
So I'll just add to what Dave said. I like your 880, I like your 887 word example, Adam, because it is typical of exactly how the machines will work. You ask it to generate like a whole bunch of words and start repeating. Now, did it start repeating the words that you didn't want it to do early in the sequence, or did it start repeating it later in the sequence? That makes a difference to see. Because these are stochastic / probabilistic machines, they don't remember what they generated earlier. They're not even remembering the words because there's no concept of the word. It's actually token. So they embed the words into mathematical representations called vectors. And then they start matching these things in their transformer networks. It's pretty fancy, which is why it's hard to explain. Now, if you had done what Dave said, break it up into steps, and you ask it to take the 887 words and look for repetitions itself as a subtask, it'll find the repetitions because now you've given it a smaller task. And then you say, what's the final list you can give me? It'll give you 860 words and say, here's the 27 repetitions, but I got 860. In that 860, you'll have to still do what Dan said. Check whether it got that right. But I can guarantee you the kind of capacities that are now existing, it'll probably find the repetitions anyway, because then it's a simple matching task that it can do with less stochastic variation. So this is where we are. This will get, this will improve as we go. So on the ethics question about why we are even using these things where they don't fully explain, where we don't fully understand how they work, I think that's the $1 million thing, Tamar. The answer to the answer that the AI movement has for this from academia is what they call explainable AI. So there are engineering folks in my area who are on this. So they would like a shift to get the machine to explain how it does what it does. And there is this technical word called attention in the transformer area where you use the machines itself to explain back how it did what it did. I don't know where it's going to go, but there are attempts being made. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you for that. Subu's at Stanford, was at Stanford. So, all right. Well, any other questions, or we? Oh, we have one more. We have time. Or feedback. Oh, hold on one sec.
Thank you.
So I run a small newsroom and I want my folks to get smart on this. How does one get smart on this in terms of training of reporters, particularly reporters who are skeptical about everything, particularly AI?
Yeah.
So is there a, what's the 101 course, so to speak?
I mean, I will tell you, there's a guy named Mike Riley, and he has a really great website called look up Mike Riley's Journalist Toolbox, and he has a whole section on AI. And he and people like him also do trainings. I've also been approached to do trainings, but it's like to find somebody who has the time to do it, who also is good at it, is tough. There's a whole lot of snake oil salesmanship going on around AI trainings. You have to be careful, but I'd start with that. And the Online News Association actually has a whole group and a series around AI. And I believe a lot of that is available for members. I don't know to what extent it's available to non-members, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards and at least get some of that to you or find out. But there's info out there. I mean, in terms of the skepticism, I mean, I feel like a lot of us went through this in the early days of the internet and then the mid days of the internet with Web 2.0. And now it's happening again. The whole idea of like, you can lead the horse to water, but can't make it drink problem. Like, we're always going to have that with new things. But I think if you can, the reason I showed the electric car vehicle charging system with Poe is because it is free. Anybody can do it. Hopefully your journalists know how to go and find public data. I mean, it's everywhere. And like, if once you can see that, oh, I can feed something in that I have control over and then have it work with that and avoid these other hairier issues from the LLM side, it's pretty cool to know that you as a reporter could just make your own little, with permission from their boss, which is you, that they can make their own little helper bots to help guide them through information that they may have, right? And then work with them as their editor to then, you know, see what comes back. And I think there's no shortcut around that. You know, you just, I think as a leader, you have to really incentivize and reward your employees for playing around and give them the time and space to do that. Give them also the opportunity or the permission to fail, but have safeguards so they're not failing publicly. You know, you could do your own workshops on this with these free tools. It's not hard. I've actually thought of doing, you know, putting out some YouTubes just for basic things like this. We'll have this on YouTube. Yes. Right. So like but there is help out there. So you just have to find the right people.
Brant.
Yes.
That is
Jeremy Kaplan has a
Yeah,
newsletter on AI.
yeah, Jeremy Kaplan, and he's a good intro. He simplifies things. He puts AI in categories. And so if you sort of did Jeremy and then you went to Mike Riley's YouTubes,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think Jeremy, sometimes we go to Mike Riley's site. He's done so much. It's like, where do I start?
Where do you start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to go with a guideline, and he's got
Yeah,
some
Jeremy Kaplan
tips
is really
too.
good
Yep.
suggestion.
And Riley is like REI.
REILLY.
Yes.
Not O'Reilly.
And you know, and the question is great. And I hope we're providing an obvious answer here. It's like you've got people that we certainly believe you can trust and can contact and can at least get you to places you need to go to. But this could be anyone in this group here could be a starting point.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay.